Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. It's been a pretty decent week. We kind of haven't been too used to that with Tottenham Hotspur this season, but it hasn't been too bad. As always with these videos, going to go down a familiar route. Very briefly going to talk about the match at the weekend. Then obviously going to spend a big old major chunk on talking about the next manager and a little look ahead towards the end. But the reason I say it's been a good week because we kind of got to enjoy football again at the weekend. Yes, massive caveat that Tottenham are playing the bottom team in the league, already relegated. One of the teams who, probably going to end up with one of the lowest ever Premier League totals in points. Yes. But ultimately, you can only beat what's in front of you. And Spurs, certainly this season, have had issues in really comfortably seeing off some of the teams lower down the table. It's been a real thing, games against Brighton, they lost against Brighton, against West Brom, Fulham. We've seen it all, even just in recent months. So I think for Tottenham just to go out, just play some good football, turn on the style a bit. It took them a little while, admittedly. They had to break down. Sheffield United were pretty compact, but there was some good football played, and it was just lovely to be able to enjoy a Tottenham Hotspur match. For me personally, be able to write about it, although obviously we're in the middle of a social media boycott, so that was very weird, not being able to tweet anything about the game. But, it was fun to be at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium again, and it was, Ryan Mason, everything I'm hearing about Ryan Mason, I'm going to talk a little bit later about him in terms of some people calling for him to be a permanent manager, but in terms of what he's doing right now, I think he's doing a phenomenal job. I really think he is. For a 29-year-old, everything I'm hearing from within the club and people, who don't really have a reason to say, this, it's not like anyone needs to promote him or plug him, because like I'm going to say later, I'd be very shocked if he's going to become the next permanent manager anyway. But what I'm hearing a lot, and this is from different people, that his training sessions are excellent. That he's doing really, really well in very quickly having to implement what he wants from Tottenham. What I personally think helps is that it's very clear that he is a Mauricio Pochettino disciple. And I think having the bulk of players there very well aware of what Poch used to want, being able to put a lot of the similar ideas back into their heads, hopefully for Ryan Mason, isn't too difficult to do that quickly. It's an easier thing than if he was coming in with an absolutely brand new style and very quickly trying to implement it. I'm sure, as he said himself, he wants to be his own man and there'll be things he wants differently done to what Poch did. But yeah, from everything I'm hearing, his training sessions for a 29-year-old in his first managerial role, suddenly throwing everything together. I mean, last week, before Sheffield United, was his first full week working with the first team. And he came out with a 4-0 victory. Again, don't want to go too overboard because we know the opposition wasn't the greatest in the world, but he's got the players are enjoying themselves out there, and you could see. And obviously, like I say, there were big old hallmarks of Pochettino there. There was aggressive pressing right from the start. You could see that. And to be fair, that was something Mourinho wanted. And the players didn't always do it, a bit like they did to Poch at the end. There was pressing, there was energy, there was really playing high up the pitch. That was something Bale spoke about in his interview afterwards, just how they were so pushed up the pitch. Yes, there's a risk of getting in behind them, but it just really took the game to Sheffield United a lot. There was passing, little intricate passing moves that were very nice. There were flying fullbacks. Certainly under Poch, you had Walker and Rose, especially back in the prime, were flying down there. Under Mourinho, the fullbacks had kind of differing roles. Sometimes Reguilon was allowed to go on, sometimes Aurier. Sometimes in some games, both were very much, you could see, they weren't allowed to go over the halfway line too much. But under Mason, he's kind of said to them, look, you're part of the attack as well. You go for it, but you have to get back. So there was a lot of that. There was the very nostalgic sight of seeing Dele Alli back out there buzzing around the final third, doing what he does. I'm going to talk about his performance rather shortly. Toby Alderweireld, those crossfield balls. There was one moment where I think Lo Celso told him, just calm down, you don't have to do that. And then he said, and just pinged it anyway. that was all very Poch, although I always understood that Poch wasn't a massive fan of the Alderweireld long ball because he didn't like the midfield being bypassed too much. And there was just kind of showing no mercy. Maybe not just accepting 1 or 2 goals and then sitting back. Spurs just kept going. Even in those final moments, Kane put Reguilon through and he really should have scored the 5th goal. So yeah, it was enjoyable. It was good fun. It was the kind of performance, that we want to see more of from Tottenham, a bit more free-flowing, and it's only good for momentum. That's probably the most important thing right now as well. It had its little bits of drama in the VAR. I just can't get my head. Pardon the pun, I couldn't get my head around. John Fleck on Giovanni Lo Celso. It's like the more I see it, the more I can't understand how he couldn't have got his foot out the way. I can kind of get how the whole movement itself could be accidental, but then you see him put his foot down, hit the shoulder, and just continue to go down with his foot. And then he doesn't turn around. Most people, had it been a real absolute accident, would have turned around and gone, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," kind of thing. "You okay?" He doesn't. He turns around and flings his arms up in the air as if it's like, "Oh, what's he rolling about for?" kind of thing. And you just think, you saw the side of his face, Lo Celso. That was a big old stud down the face kind of thing. And I don't know if you've seen it today. Eric Dyer's taken the mickey a bit. There's a photo of him training where his foot has come down just near Lo Celso's head on the floor. And he said, "Oh, I accidentally missed him." It's very good. But yeah, how VAR, I think it was Peter Banks, the VAR ref, looked at it for a moment. It was only brief. And then just thought, nah. And didn't even tell the referee to go to the monitor. And I think Peter Banks was the same guy that did Valbuena's follow through on Ben Chilwell in the West Ham Chelsea game and said he should go and look at his monitor. So how in the world that this incident didn't call for some consistency in that respect, I don't know. I can't get my head around that again, pardon the pun. And then we had VAR for Son's offside. It's like, if you're going to be offside by an armpit, it's mad. But I'm not even going to labour on that point because Spurs have had that so much, but they're not alone. When it's so marginal with VAR, it's almost a bit like, yes, I guess that, people could say you're either offside or you're not, but you're not, scoring with your armpit, But there you go. Anyway, enough of that. I don't want to talk about VAR too much. Let's talk about good stuff. Gareth Bale, this was much better. Again, caveat that Sheffield United, I always want to say that because whenever I say nice things about people, I always get underneath in the comments, "Oh, come on, it was only Sheffield United." And I understand that. I do understand that. But also, what I would say, the 3 goals that Gareth Bale scored, he would have scored those against anybody. He was really roaring in confidence. This was the Bale kind of like that little purple patch of that month before the North London derby when it all went a little bit pear-shaped after. And I really, you do... I think the key word for me when I watched him, and again, an absolute privilege to be inside that stadium to watch him score a hat-trick, first since 2012, I think, Aston Villa. The first kind of word that came to my mind was just regret. A regret that we haven't been able to see more of that this season. I'm one who will always back Mourinho in the way he dealt with Bale for me in the early months. I thought what he did was spot on. I thought the way he slowly brought him back, and everything I heard at the time was that Bale himself, was having a real kind of almost like psychological scars from the injuries he'd had, and there's some days he might not train and things like that. And I felt Mourinho handled it perfectly. Where I felt I veered away from that viewpoint was, I think I've kind of said this before. I don't want to labour it too much, but I feel like after Bale had that really good patch, and you could kind of see, he makes a real difference to Tottenham. We were then getting the scenario, especially with the North London derby, and after that, where he was just like one bad performance and that's it, he was done. And this, unfortunately, was a little bit of a theme with some of the players. But I felt for Bale, it was a major thing, and it's a regret that we haven't seen. I mean, you look at his stats, 14 goals and 3 assists in I think it's something like 30, 31 games. In the Premier League, he scored 8 in his last 8 appearances. He's got a goal or assist in the Premier League every 66 minutes. Come on. We were all kind of saying, was it really a great deal? With Spurs are paying him whatever it is, between 240,000 a week, top earner, and he's not really playing, or this and that. But if he's having that kind of output, you've just got to wonder. You're getting more out there, Every goal was superb. Obviously, the first one, a delicate little touch from Aurier's brilliant chipped ball. The second one was gone completely out of my head. The second one was... Wait a minute, I'll come back to it. Third one. This is what happens when you do a video days afterwards. The third one was the touch at the... the third one was the drive, wasn't it? Picked out by Son. Second one has completely gone out of my head. It's going to randomly come to me during this video, and you're all going to be screaming at me right now. Like, how in the world have you forgotten that second one? Who was it? Son? Aurier set him up for the third one as well. Second one, I feel, was Son. It'll come to me. It will come to me. But I know it was a really good finish as well, which is what's really annoying me about it. So, yeah. Anyway, the hat-trick itself, fantastic hat-trick. And just showed kind of what he can do, what he can bring to the team. And I think on a day when Harry Kane had a bad day at the office, I think it was really important to see not only Bale shining, but also Son. I felt, his goal was phenomenal. The curling shot in off the post was just... Oh, it's just perfect. It really was. It was second goal. I remembered it. I knew I'd remember it. It was Son. It was Son breaking through, putting Bale clear, sprinted through, showed a fair bit of pace for a 31-year-old. He always told us he's still got his pace, and he looked behind him, and he didn't have time to look back and launch that brilliant shot. So emphatic into the top corner. You see the pleasure on my face that I remembered that. That was really, when that, something that's right in the kind of forefront of your mind, for some reason it's clouded and you just can't get there. So yeah, lovely goal. But Son, sorry, I was talking about Son there. Son's goal, beautiful. And as I've said before, I think that was really important for Son in that he's had a real dip in 2021. I think in terms of confidence, perhaps, the 2020 version of Son, second half, especially first half of the season, phenomenal. And then just something's happened. I think before Mason came in, he'd only scored, I think, set 2 Premier League goals, I think, before Mason came in, which, was weird. It was weird, bearing in mind how many he was scoring before. But just under Mason, I'm not saying this is a Mourinho or Mason thing, by the way, before the Mourinho fans got onto me. I'm just saying I think it's just needed something to click in his play. And obviously now he's got back-to-back in the Premier League against Southampton and Sheffield United. And Sheffield United goal was vintage Son. That beautiful cut inside and curl that he's done so many times. And also a little assist for Steven Bergwijn as well. That was big for him. We mustn't discount little moments like that for a player like him. Because, I still think Steven Bergwijn's got a proper future at Tottenham. And I'll come to him when I talk about a couple of players that maybe we might see move on. But overall, good performance. I mean, I thought it was nice to see Dele back as well. He was rusty. He wasn't absolutely flying at the top as he would, and I don't think that's what you'd expect for a guy. That was his third Premier League start of the season. But I felt he showed up everywhere. He was looking to get the ball. He was constantly trying to link up play. I thought he did a decent job. There were some sloppy passes, there were some miscontrols in the final third, but that's kind of what's going to happen. And I felt, and I've kind of always felt this season anyway, that Dele's probably the only natural number 10 Spurs have got right now. I think Lucas certainly has looked a lot better than he did out wide coming into it, but I don't think it's his natural fit. He's not a playmaker, as it were, not a creator of chances. And I think Lo Celso and Ndombele probably better suited to deeper roles. And I think Lamela probably is slightly more of a wide man as well. And I think so for Dele, we saw when he used to link up playing just behind Harry Kane. I think that could be his position. And who knows? If he can get a little run now. It's interesting. Mason said that Lucas hadn't trained all week. He didn't tell us why. I don't know why that was. But whether Dele now gets another shot against Leeds or whether Lucas comes back in, we'll see. Personally, it's a difficult one because I think Lucas has done pretty well and I think he's been one of Spurs' brighter players in those attacking midfield areas. But I just kind of feel that balance-wise, if Dele can get back into his rhythm and get a bit of belief in himself and that others believe in him, I think, it was lovely to see Bass score. I know there's a couple of slightly ruder acronyms for it of, Bale, Ali, Dele and Kane up there. Bale, Ali, Son and Kane. Basque. Couldn't even work it out myself for a moment. It was good to see them all playing together. That's the Hollywood star. That's the blockbuster quartet, isn't it? That's the one that I think we all expected to see when Bale was mooted as coming back to the club in the first place. And I'd like to see kind of what happens with Dele now and how he pushes on from here. Serge Aurier, of course, I want to touch on Serge Aurier. 2 really good assists. I think the big thing, and I asked Ryan Mason about this after the game, was for me the big thing is they were only a second and third assist of the whole season in all competitions, which we wouldn't normally associate that with Aurier. We associate him with being maybe more known for his attacking and his defending. And I thought, I said that to Mason. I said, why do you think it is that he's kind of, you could see the quality and what he can do with the ball when he really kind of concentrates on the final product and the final ball. And he was like, well, to be honest, you've got to look at his first job is to defend. And Spurs have had that's their 11th clean sheet of the season. And he's played his part in that. And he also pointed out, which was spot on, that, what made Sunday's performance even more impressive, that he was fasting as well, for Ramadan. And they had a little moment where they stopped and he was able to take on some energy gel, I think it was he had. So to do that, having not eaten as well all day, it was very impressive. Aurier was very, very good on the day. I thought all the defence were very good again. They kind of left Lloris with very little to do. Eric Dyer, once again, good performance with Toby Alderweireld. Eric Dyer afterwards came out with an interview kind of saying that he feels the narrative's been slightly unfair about him. He feels that he's made 1 or 2 mistakes and then it's kind of got painted in that he makes regular mistakes. And I'd agree to a certain degree. I think there's been more than 1 or 2 mistakes. What I would say is that once you make mistakes, you get definitely painted as someone that makes lots of mistakes. And sometimes if a goal, actually, when you analyse and break down the phases of play, is someone else's fault, maybe let's use Eric Dyer. Maybe Eric Dyer was dragged out of position because another player wasn't in their position, and that makes Dyer look like it's his error when it wasn't. Then Dyer will be the one that gets it because maybe player A, B, or C is preferred or is someone that has given a little bit more slack. And I agree. I do agree with him on that. I think he gets a lot more abuse than he probably should. And I do think, I've said this a million times, that if he could cut out those little basic errors he makes and also fix his distribution, which is pretty poor at times, I think the makings of a very good centre-back are there. I thought, I said it and I still got criticised for it, but that's the way it goes. I felt against Man City, taking his distribution out of it, so his defending was superb against Man City. But I know there's more to a defender's game nowadays than just the defending element. But I thought that was an interesting. It's the second time he's kind of come out and said it's a little bit unfair, the criticism he gets. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Eric Dyer going forward. But on Dembele as well, got to touch on him. He wasn't playing again. I saw him mucking about before the game. He's in a good place, Tongi. He's not in a place like last season where everything was an affront. Everything was an insult to his professional nature and all this sort of stuff. I watched him before the game. He came up behind Steve Jukes, the kit manager, and he did the old, put his hands over his eyes and guess who this is kind of thing. He's in a good place. He's a happy guy, settled. Everyone really likes Tongi. I think he's just at a point right now where he had a particularly rubbish game against Southampton and it was just badly timed because it came right before the final. That lost him his place in the final. Whether I believe that is right or not, I said it in my last video that I felt the possession game favoured him. And I actually had some people asking me why he didn't start, to ask about on Dembele, why he didn't start him on Sunday. And it's I get that we all like certain players and all that, but you don't ask after a 4-0 victory, why didn't you play him? Because it sounds faintly ridiculous, doesn't it, really? But I get it. Funny enough, did ask him on the Friday, whenever the press conference was. I asked him on the pre-match press conference, and he very much swerved the question, Ryan Mason. But, for Tongi, I think he knows that he just will contribute when he can in these last few games. He's played a lot of games this season. He's pushed on. Still got a hell of a lot more to do, I think. I do think his potential is still right up there, and he's probably around here right now. There's a hell of a lot more he can do to match that up. But he's getting there. It's a world away from what we saw last season. And we'll see what the new guy who comes in and what they want to do with Tongi. It'll be a fresh slate again for him. But yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it. It's a little bit the same with Joe Rodon as well. People say, why Joe Rodon not involved? Well, as I said, the defence against City was very good, so they deserved really to stay in again, and I think they'll stay in again because I think they did well against Sheffield United. I mean, you could argue, should he be on the bench over Davinson Sanchez? I'd say potentially with the performances, he was probably the most positive performer out of the defence in Mourinho's last few games. However, I think if you're Ryan Mason, you're probably just going to go with experience and kind of what you know just to get you through. Because Ryan Mason, he's trying to make a statement in these remaining games as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that, to be honest with you. Yeah. So there you go. I think that's probably where we'll wrap it up on. I still did 20 minutes. Apologies for that. Still did 20 minutes on that game. But yeah, positive, I think. Albeit with the caveat that it was Sheffield United. Don't worry, I'm saying that. Let's talk about management stuff. First off, let's talk about with the manager who was Jose Mourinho, now a Roma boss, which I think surprised a lot of people, especially a lot of the Italian journalists. I could see a lot of them scrabbling up, what? Kind of thing. I think he wasn't expecting it as well, because certainly he did an interview only a couple of days before where he was saying, I think maybe next season is too soon for me to get back into management, have a little break and analyse things and all that. And bang, here we are, head coach of Roma. Obviously, it's good news for Tottenham. As far as I understand it, Tottenham, the terms of his kind of departure, he was technically on gardening leave, which I think was similar to what they did with Poch. So I think, and this is roughly, don't quote me on this, it's roughly they would have had to pay his salary for the next, I think it's between 15 and 18 months until he found a new job. So what's happened now is he obviously has found this new job, and as far as I'm aware, I know some of the reports out of Italy are saying differently. As far as I'm aware, Spurs now just have to pay him, have him on their payroll until the summer when he becomes the Roma manager. I'm not sure what month exactly it is he's taken over. I presume once he's done his punditry work for the Euros. But yeah, that's huge for Spurs. I think they're saving a lot of money from it, from what I understand. Like I say, I've seen reports in Italy trying to say otherwise. I can only go on what I've been told, and it's that Spurs this has been a bit of a woo kind of thing for them. They've managed to, whereas Poch obviously remained out of work, mostly because of, I think, the COVID situation, to be fair, remained out of work for, was it a year, wasn't it, or so? Whereas Mourinho, bang, straight in a new job, which is fantastic for him. And I think he'll do really well with Roma. Roma's a bit, I suppose you could kind of slightly compare it with Tottenham in they haven't won a trophy for a little while. Haven't got the financial power of the big boys, and it's going to be a challenge for him. But I think Italian football especially will really suit the way he wants to play, and I think I think he'll do really well there. Don't forget, he left Italian football on a real high, didn't he? He never really had any dip in Italian football. He was at the absolute pinnacle when he left. And, I hope he does really well. Like I say, this is weird. I've had so strange people on Twitter. I've done so much muting of many Mourinho fans. As I've said before, I find a lot of Mourinho fans really fascinating and interesting to engage with and have dialogue. And some just are not willing to kind of discuss or debate anything. They're just almost like, it's almost like a cult, which is really weird because football's not like that. Any player, manager, anyone has upsides and bad sides, and that's the way it is, as we all do. None of us are perfect. It'd be really weird and boring if we were. I had various Mourinho fans telling me that essentially I think I'm almost like the Antichrist, and that I made Tottenham get rid of him, which is so far from the case. If anything, I kind of felt I probably remained as objective as possible far longer than many other people because, as I've said, I found him a fascinating character. I never had any issues with him whatsoever. Found him really good to deal with, and he was good with me as well. And I do really wish him the best, as I always do with former Spurs managers. So hopefully he does really well in Italy with Roma. But that obviously leads us... actually, before I go on, I just want to say there is the does it open a door with Mourinho going to Roma of potentially coming in for some Tottenham players? I saw some of the links today with Højbjerg and Dyer. I'd be stunned if Højbjerg goes anywhere. Spurs signed him for an absolute bargain. They're never letting him go. He's on a big deal, massively popular figure in the changing room. He's not going to Roma without, a huge fee. I saw Eric Dyer as well. I mean, Eric Dyer, it depends what the deal would be and whether Eric Dyer decides, I want a new experience. He's a guy, obviously, that is not tied to England. Obviously, his formative years in Portugal, so he's not going to be scared of a new challenge. Personally, I wonder whether he looks at the likes of Lamela and Lucas. Lamela has the Roma connection. Roma, he was adored at. And I think if the price was right, I think Spurs would probably go for it as well, purely because of the injury history and that he's coming towards the last 12 months of his contract as well. Whether Mourinho would want him, I don't know. He always said he loved Coco, as he's called, when he was really on his game. I think he likes Lucas a lot. And as I've said before, I think if Spurs could get good money for Lucas, I think that would fund some other moves. And, I know Lucas has got a lot of fans, and I think he's had a much improved second half to the season, in the Premier League especially. But I do wonder whether he's one of those forwards that they can get some money for, which would help finance other areas, namely a new centre-back. We'll keep an eye on that and see what happens with Roma and Spurs, and whether any kind of... there's always been a little dialogue there. There's always been links with Roma, a relationship. So I'd be interested to see where that goes from now on. In terms of managers at Tottenham, who the next manager will be. Now, how do I put this? I still am told that Tottenham hope to announce their next manager before the end of the season. I definitely know that the club are looking to put it out there that no, it will be, it's likely to be after the season is finished because they want to talk to managers that are in jobs and things like that. I know that's being pushed out there. But as I say, I keep getting told, and this is frequently, that there is a real hope that they can do it and get it announced before the end of the season. And obviously, having people reporting that that's not the case, and it will be after the season, of course, I think the aim would be to lessen the speculation and to give them more of a free rein, and not free rein, just an easier way of operating, but that's not how it works. I mean, we're going to come on to some of the names that have been bandied about out there. Speculations, as long as there's a vacant position, speculation exists. Doesn't matter when you say the time frame is, but yeah, as far as I'm aware, they're still trying to get it done. This is Tottenham Hotspur, so hope to get it done by the end of the season. Could well mean it doesn't get done before the end of the season. It could be, but from what I understand, that's the aim, and that they still believe that that could be the way it goes. Which again, as I've said before, lends itself to certain managers. But let's talk about some of the names out there. Let's chuck some away, because the Italian media in particular have been absolutely... I always find this, that the Italian media, and I know some Italian journalists, and they're absolutely excellent, but there seems to be a really fascination with Tottenham Hotspur, and sometimes I'll see Italian stuff written about Tottenham Hotspur, and there's no Italian link. As in, it's about a player from Spain or something, and you think, what? Why? And and this is the case with the manager stuff. There's a lot of names that have just been constantly churned out there. I've seen, obviously, Sarri. Sarri comes up daily, and I'm constantly told Sarri is not a candidate for the Tottenham Hotspur job. Antonio Conte, I've seen today, not a candidate for the Tottenham Hotspur job as far as I'm aware. He's also one of the most incredibly well-paid managers in world football. The last thing Spurs really want that right now is to pay one of the most expensive coaches in the world. They kind of just did that. And they... and also, neither Sarri or Conte fit the profile. I said this last week. They're looking for someone that plays really progressive, attacking, possession-based football, cutting-edge techniques, all of this sort of stuff. Obviously, Conte is more the Italian style of football, a little bit more different, patient, kind of... Italian football is probably the best way to describe it. Him and Sarri maybe slightly from a similar-ish... They're not identical, of course not, but a similar-ish playbook. Gianpiero Gasperini, Atalanta boss, I've seen linked. Apparently nothing in that whatsoever. It seems to be a real Italian theme of people being thrown into the mix for the Spurs job. And what I find that's quite interesting afterwards is that I saw this with Ralph Ragnick as well, who again is another one I don't believe to be a serious candidate for the Tottenham job, is that you see it initially comes out that Tottenham have approached them. Then the story slightly changes to they have been offered to Tottenham. Then it becomes a naming consideration or something. And it just keeps this weird kind of wording circus that kind of goes round and round and round. And yeah, no, as far as I'm aware, all of those names I've just mentioned are not people that are currently likely to get the Tottenham Hotspur job. Who else do we have this week? Daniel Fonseca, obviously, with Paulo Fonseca. Oh my God, his first name's gone Fonseca from Roma. Let's talk that way. Has gone out of my head completely. But yeah, he's not a candidate. I saw some people saying, I think it was probably, 2 and 2 makes 5 there, of Mourinho going to Roma, Fonseca leaving Roma, and then Roma being, he could go the other way to Tottenham. And I understand that that's not the case. I think Spurs would probably say that they maybe haven't had the best of luck with Portuguese managers when they've appointed them. Obviously, the one I was talking about that I'd like, I was one of my personal hopes. I was kind of being drawn towards was Erik ten Hag. Funnily enough, literally the morning after the video. This is the way information works sometimes. The morning after the video, any of you whoever reads my stuff might have seen that I wrote a piece the very next morning saying I've been told that Spurs are slightly wary that he may be using them to not using them, but any discussions with Spurs might be helping his case for a new contract at Ajax. And literally it was either later that day or the next morning, Ajax announced this new contract. It's interesting to see whether it's a new contract or whether it's an option that's been taken up to extend his contract, because it's only a year extra, which tends to make me think it's the latter. I suppose you could argue that if Spurs really, really wanted him, that he's still there to be got, and then they would just have to pay a fee, now a bigger compensation fee to get him. I kind of feel with the way the quotes were from him about staying at Ajax and even kind of indirectly talking about the Tottenham interest, I kind of feel that ship has sailed, which is a shame. As I said last week, I liked the idea of him. I think he was a gamble, of course he was, as anyone that hasn't been in the Premier League before is, but I kind of liked the idea of Ten Hag. I won't lie, I definitely said that. So, who else we got? This is the thing. As I've previously said, there was a long list of names that they're slowly working their way down to. I saw Daniel Farke linked, the Norwich boss. I don't believe he is a candidate in there, but I like him personally. On a personal level, I like him. I think he does really good stuff with young players, and obviously taking Norwich back up to the Premier League. So it'll be really interesting to see what he does back in the Premier League again. Allegri's still bouncing about. Obviously, while he's a free agent, I think he's always going to be one attractive prospect for Tottenham if they can't get probably a person that fits their profile exactly. As I said previously, the issue with him probably is the lack of English. I think that's going to be something there that so it just fell off a shelf there. It's all right. It's fine. It was nothing that could be damaged. But Allegri, I think that would count against. I think Spurs have had issues in the past with managers that didn't speak English, and it just became an absolute pain in the backside. So I can see that counting against him. And like I said, it doesn't really fit that profile. Let's talk about Ryan Mason. I've seen some people saying give him the job. Why not? From everything I understand, it's they're not thinking about that at the moment. It's very premature. By all means, if he went on and won the last 4 games and so had won all 6 of his Premier League matches and, the fates conspired beautifully to get Tottenham into the top 4, who knows? Who knows whether the weight of public pressure and trying to appease the fans who obviously aren't too happy, who knows? But I don't think it's likely. I think it's very, very early days for Ryan Mason. I really, like I say about his training and his coaching, I think he could be a very, very good manager in the future. I personally would love to see him kind of become part of the staff of whoever does come in, continue to really learn his trade. I know that's always going to be a little bit difficult when you've been the manager. And it may be that after a short amount of time, he goes out like Scott Parker did from the under-18s at Spurs and becomes his own man at another club. And I hope he does really well, because I've been so impressed with him. His press conference has been excellent, mature beyond his years. As he said himself, he's probably fitted what would be 10, 20 years of coaching from other people into such a short space of time, because he was so young. He had to turn his life around after the head injury. He's been learning from Pochettino and Mourinho. He's had a terrific education. So yeah, I'd probably say a little bit too early. We mentioned Parker as well. I wouldn't say Parker's off the table whatsoever, but what I would say is I would be surprised if and we're talking about kind of the mental aspect now, of Fulham are likely to go down. It looks like they're going to, after a real kind of battle. But would you take, when your aim is to get into the top four, would you pluck a manager out of a situation where he's just been relegated with a team? I don't know mentally whether that works to then inspire players to then play sexy Champions League qualification style football. I think it maybe is just too early for Scott Parker for me, but we'll see. You never know what happens if first choices can't be got, and then maybe Spurs revise what they want. But I'd be surprised if it was Scott Parker. But I was talking about Ryan Mason, and honestly, I think he could be a terrific manager, but just maybe not yet. Who else have we got out there? Graham Potter, seen a lot of links with him as well. He certainly is one that Spurs have been looking at. They really like his style of football. Him and Roberto Martinez both got that same thing about them. They both really like the way they play football. With Potter, I think there's a little bit of a concern about looking at the clubs he's managed before, whether he's a strong enough character to step up and handle the egos and the bigger kind of players, with no disrespect to his current club, Brighton, or any of the previous one, but maybe with dealing with the pressures of that higher levels that they're expected to be at. That could be incredibly unfair, and he could be absolutely, you never know till you step into that situation. But yeah, I'm kind of led to believe, I don't think he's maybe going to be a top choice candidate. But certainly, as I've said in the past, I really like the way his teams play football, and you can see what they'd be like with a striker who could really put away the goals. But yeah, I'm kind of feel like this is going to be like a no to everyone. But I'm going to explain why I feel that's the case at the moment. I said about Ralph Rangnick as well. Some slightly iffy comments as well that he's made in the past that have kind of come out, I've noticed, which people might want to look up, which I'd probably say just another nail in the coffin really for that link. Spurs certainly don't want to be going anywhere where there could be old quotes and comments dragged up for controversy's sake, and the fact that they're not particularly right comments to say either. But I'll leave that to you guys to look up for. But yeah, I mean, when I talk about the profile of manager Spurs want, the irony is, that profile is Mauricio Pochettino. It is a young, not young. That's rubbish. That's not true. I've been told that age is not an issue. Age isn't a thing. But they do want a progressive manager who plays attack-minded football, possession-based football, uses cutting-edge techniques, and it's all about very much being a very modern manager on the front foot. That's Mauricio Pochettino. We know he is. We can't skip away from that. Essentially, Spurs are looking for another Mauricio Pochettino. Some might argue after the result against Manchester City and what might happen at the end of this season. I'm hoping they do win Ligue 1, but you never know with Lille doing so well as well. Who knows? Maybe Mauricio Pochettino might be available for Tottenham to fit the exact profile they want. Julian Nagelsmann obviously fitted that profile as well, but has gone for like a world record compensation figure to Bayern Munich. Brendan Rodgers, I think, fits that mould as well. There's a part of me that thinks that Brendan Rodgers would like the Tottenham job, but there's another part of me that thinks he would also have to sit down and tell himself, it's likely Leicester are going to be in the Champions League. They won the Premier League just a few years back. What are you doing, Brendan? While I will always push the virtues of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and what amazing, almost like a sleeping giant it is, I wouldn't personally really understand it unless you're going from a historical point of view why Rodgers would give up what he's got. And I also think he'd be really expensive. I think he's still got about 4 years left in his big 6-year deal he signed. It's whether Spurs, felt that it was just, we've saved that money with Mourinho moving straight to Roma. What the hell, let's try and offer a load for a man that we think can really get us pushing on again. But like I say, I don't think Leicester would let him go without a fight. And why would you give up Champions League football? And they could win the FA Cup final as well. That's a big call, especially as well after recent comments about, he didn't go as strongly as I felt some people made out he did. He said, no, Spurs are a big club, but I'm very happy where I am. It was the stock line that I think anyone would come out with, and Poch used to come out with loads when he was linked with other clubs. A lot would have to happen in the coming weeks, I think, for that situation to turn around. But yeah, I wouldn't write Brendan Rodgers off entirely, but I just think that would be a tough deal to do. But the reason I think, I was saying that when I say no to a lot of these names, mainly that's because I think the media, especially in other countries, want to push candidates of their own nationality. There will be agents that have reasoning for pushing their clients, because obviously it helps them either, as we've seen in the Netherlands with Ten Hag getting his Ajax extension, and that will be the same elsewhere, or it will push them into other jobs. What I kind of get the feeling, I still keep getting the feeling that it's maybe a name that either is one that, like a Rodgers, that we just think that's not going to happen, but it actually kind of does. Because I know Tottenham really like Brendan Rodgers. When I say no to these other ones, I know a lot of these that Spurs are just not looking at. Whereas with Rodgers, I know they really like him. Whether it's him or whether, as I think I said in the last video, there's just someone that we're not aware of yet. There always is. As much digging as we in the media can do, there's always someone that comes out of the woodwork quite late on. And I do wonder whether there's someone who fits this profile of being able to be appointed before the end of the season, and fits that profile of, like I said, attack-minded, possession-based football, cutting-edge techniques, all of that, that we haven't thought of yet. If you do, please put them in the comments below, because I can start then digging around. But I pretty much have tried to look into so many different names. And to me, I think that's a good thing if we haven't worked it out yet, because it means Spurs are going about their business without kind of getting hassled by the likes of Muppets like me, I guess. It means that they're cracking on with stuff, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But that's fascinating. I'm fascinated to see who it's going to be. Like I say, the amount of times you just look and realise it's Poch, which makes you wonder whether getting rid of him was the best thing to do, Mr. Levy. I'll always say that I still feel Poch needed that break. I think he wasn't getting the backing that he probably wanted, and he, as I've said before, was absolutely crushed by that Champions League final. And I don't think we saw the same Poch. I'll tell this story very quickly, but apologies if you've heard me tell it before, but certainly when we were in Singapore and Shanghai on the pre-season tour talking to him out there, he looked knackered and fed up by everything. And this was after a few months, having had it was about a month off, wasn't it, after Champions League final, and he wasn't energised. He wasn't really buzzing about the new season. He just it's just a little bit down and dour. And for Poch, that was quite unusual. So I still maintain that while I think it seems daft to have got rid of him at that time, and obviously it was clearly motivated by bringing in Mourinho, which ultimately ended up being a mistake if you weren't going to back him in the way that Mourinho needs to be backed. I do kind of feel that Poch probably will benefit in his career from having that break. I think he needed it to get everything out of his system. And whether that means that he returns to Tottenham at the end of this summer or this summer, like I say, I don't think that fits in with the announced before the end of the season thing anyway. We'll see. But, I mean, it'd be an interesting question for you guys. Would you want Poch back? Would you, especially if he's leaving PSG, it's probably because it hasn't worked for him. Yes, he's won the League Cup, and he could potentially, I think they're in the semi-finals of the French Cup as well. So he could still technically do the hat-trick over there, you know. He could still win the league and the 2 cups. But if he leaves there, it could well be because he's failed. Would you take Poch back, having not done the business at PSG? You know, it's an interesting one. Like I said, I still think there's another name to come. And I will keep on digging for you. In terms of back at Tottenham, if you haven't seen Oliver Skipp, as it had surgery, fractured his metatarsal, injured it right in the title-winning game. I think it was against QPR as well, which is such a shame for him. He'll be out, and they expect him Spurs to return to pre-season training, like during pre-season training, which doesn't suggest he's going to be ready for the start of it, but during it at some point, which is a shame because it impacts on his fitness and it impacts on how he's going to kick on. But to be fair, at least to Skippy, he's a very fit guy. I mean, anyone that's watched him for Norwich this season, he's played pretty much every minute of their Championship campaign, getting back into the Premier League. He's been brilliant for them. Won their third. It was their third best player of the season award he got. He's been phenomenal for a 20-year-old having his first full season as a regular in the first team. He's been brilliant. As I said before with Skippy, I think Spurs' first choice is to keep him around next season, get him challenging. I think we'll see some departures in the midfield area. But with a new manager, you never know what. Sometimes they come in and they have their trusted midfield player they want to bring with them who passes on their instructions on the pitch. You often see that. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world for Skippy to go back to... sorry for calling him Skippy. Apologies if that sounds really pratty, but I've been very fortunate to kind of follow Oliver Skipp for a long time since he's been playing, you know, down the age groups and even before that when I worked in local sports. He's actually a local lad from one of the areas that I used to write about. He was used to play for like the schoolboy teams and he was at Tottenham then. And so, yeah, sorry, I do kind of know him as Skippy, which is his name within Tottenham. I don't think a year back at Norwich in the Premier League would be the worst thing for him at all. I actually think it would be very good. And if he's not going to play regularly at Spurs, I think that definitely has to happen. But if there's any chance that he can play, I think he could very quickly become a fantastic player for Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think they should give up that chance readily. Now we look to Leeds up next. Leeds away. You don't know what Leeds you're going to get, obviously. We've seen so many different sides of them. You know, that's another name I've seen chucked in a hat. Marcelo Bielsa. He's a funny one. I mean, this is only a personal point of view. I kind of feel, and this might be unfair, that Poch, as the protege, kind of became a better version of his mentor. Obviously, he's had a fantastic career and has been an inspiration for so many managers. But I think in terms of with Tottenham, I kind of feel that they had a better version of it with Pochettino. And also, again, he doesn't talk English and he's a volatile character. You know, would he last that long with Daniel Levy? You know, he left, was it Lazio? He left there within like 2 days. You know, God knows what he'd be like at Tottenham. I can't see that myself. But it'll be interesting to see, you know, how Leeds and Tottenham play. I mean, obviously in the home game, Leeds didn't play that badly at all and found themselves 3-0 down before they'd even realised. So, yeah, I think it's a big game for Spurs, of course it is. And it'll be interesting to see how they play. You know, the run-in is going to be fascinating. Chelsea and Leicester have both got really, really tough run-ins. If you look at it, there's the potential there for them dropping a lot of points. But on the flip side, West Ham and Liverpool have got very comparatively simpler run-ins. Spurs is kind of midway. But, you know, I think a lot is on Leicester. I think they've got Newcastle next. But Leicester, if they don't get a really positive result against Newcastle, with the games they've got after, they've gone out of my head, but they're all against top teams, they could easily find themselves having to try and get a result against Tottenham in the last game to get into the top four. The way it works, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. I'm trying to think what else we're going to talk about. There's Tottenham Hotspur Trust. If you haven't noticed it, have put out their 6-point plan for what they want to see done with the club and having fan involvement in decisions on. I think it was in non-football decisions on the board. Tottenham, as far as I'm aware, weren't too happy about the fact that apparently Daniel Levy reached out a few times to try and have meetings with them, which were turned down. I also understand from the point of view of the trust's feeling on that was, because Levy, if you weren't aware, he's actually, to be fair to him, is one of the few Premier League owner types, he's chairman, part owner, whatever you want to call him, who actually does meet with the fan boards 2 to 3 times a year. That doesn't happen at every club. Sometimes it's once a year, sometimes it's not at all. But he does do that. And I think from the trust point of view, they were kind of keen to say, look, we don't want it to be just business as usual. We want an extraordinary meeting with the owners, which presumably would Levy and Joe Lewis. Although I always say the Joe Lewis connection is such a weird one, because Joe Lewis is the owner of a company that owns the company that owns a company that owns Tottenham. He's not this direct Roman Abramovich style overlord. It doesn't work like that. He just happens to own various companies. At the bottom of it, one of those companies owns, I think it's the Tavistock Group, owns ENIC, and ENIC own Tottenham. It's a funny indirect relationship, which is why we've never seen him be like the sugar daddy type that Spurs have probably been desperate for 20 years or so. But that's a whole other subject. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to push through from a personal point of view. Obviously, asking what is essentially a private company to allow outside influence on decisions, although I understand the logic behind it. And certainly, I think Liverpool... Is it Liverpool or is it Chelsea? Liverpool, I think, have met with fans, and Chelsea have... I think it's Chelsea have agreed to appoint 2 fan members, I think, as consultation board decisions. So it's not out of the realms of possibility at all, and I think that may open the door. But I think the key thing is getting them to sit down and discuss it, and I think there has to be some kind of compromise from both sides, I guess, in getting there and seeing what happens next. It's going to be a fascinating one again to see how that plays out. Got on the pitch and off the pitch to see what's happening at the moment. Obviously, there's talk of protests as well, and I'm not going to comment on them until I can kind of see exactly formalised what's happening and when. I know there's one that potentially was meant to happen on the 15th, but that was meant to be for a match day, but then that match has got moved, but I think it may still be happening, which is a little bit awkward because there's going to be no real media coverage of it, because you're not going to have any TV crews or anything down there because it's not the match anymore. That's the Villa match, which was now moved to midweek the next week, and the Wolves game is now the Sunday the day after. And the fact that the Wolves is the Sunday the day after this original protest means that a lot of the media, like myself, that's our working day, and now we won't be working on that Saturday. So you're not going to have us around that Saturday. We'll be, spending some much needed time with our families and stuff like that. So it may be that potentially other media, certainly with my guys, we'll have maybe someone from the desk can do it, but I don't know, it feels like a missed opportunity for me still doing it on that day. Then I was under the impression that I think the Trust were maybe trying to do a more formalised, official one, I think, which was meant to be for the Villa game, the rearranged Villa game. Again, this is why I don't want to kind of go into that too much at the moment, because I still don't know exactly what's happening and when. It's all very, very messy. Social media's got all these mixed messages about this is taking place, and some people saying, no, it doesn't make sense to do that, I'm doing this one. It's like, this is a difficulty, I guess, of arranging so many different people at the same time. But we'll see. I'll let you know. If I know exactly what's happening, I'll let you know. But otherwise, on the pitch, that's what's happening. Off the pitch, we'll wait to see what happens. So, Yeah, let's hope for another positive result against Leeds and another performance that I can come on this and have a little smile and say I really enjoyed that. That would be great. And then, I saw the little meme that went out of Tottenham at the start of the season as me all looking all happy, and Tottenham at the end of the season was me looking like beaten down and battered. And it has felt like that at times, definitely. And hopefully, though, next week I can have a big old smile on my face and we can talk about what might be. And hopefully a little bit more news on the managerial front as well. So, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.